have here a really remarkable fragment of the history of religion in China in the 20th century. This is a book I probably wouldn't believe exists if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. This is the apotheosis of General Douglas MacArthur. And although that may seem ridiculous at first, the book itself explains that while Douglas MacArthur was not a member of the Taoist religion during his life, after he died, he transformed into a disembodied state, and in that state he became a student of Taoism. He learned Chinese as a language, and eventually achieved immortality. He became a god with a lowercase g, and delivered a set of revelations to the public here on Earth in Chinese, and his sermon is in fact in Chinese poetry on the night of November 12th, 1979. So among the many things that MacArthur says from Beyond the Grave here, he says, "A third world war is unavoidable. Compared with the first two world wars, it will be the most devastating. Nobody is capable of predicting the drastic changes that will take place in the world situation. Worldwide, there will be endless wars. From these wars, fate will only allow 3 out of every 10 human beings to escape disaster." So in versified semi-classical Chinese, we there have a set of reflections that you can definitely find in many science fiction movies, many secular sources from the same period of time. It could not have been written 10 years earlier in history, and it could not have been written 10 years later in history. You know, I think it is a little bit appealing or maybe thrilling for modern Europeans to get a hold of this type of material. This is maybe a remarkable example, and see that in places like India and China, the world of the gods of the lowercase g continued. That it continued to be possible for someone who was a military leader to be elevated to becoming a god. That as in pre-Christian Greco-Roman antiquity, you had more of a dotted line between the divine and the secular, between the political and the religious, and more of a sort of dynamic tension and interplay between the two. We talk about the history of the Western world with a very clear, dark line separating the era of polytheism, gods of the lowercase g, from the era of monotheism, having one god with one hierarchy, very definitely written with a capital letter G. From the East Asian perspective, there is no convenient dividing line that way between one form of religion that has everything superstitious and negative assigned to it, and another category of religion that's presumed to be philosophical, liberal, progressive, and a positive part of a democratic and pluralistic society. But that really is the core of the modern Western bias about Greco-Roman religion, is exactly that it's pluralistic and somehow linked to democracy in ways that we don't like to think about too clearly. The Asian attitude towards the history of religion, while it remains open to the possibility of a military figure being elevated into becoming a god, while it remains open to this kind of porous interplay between political reality, visionary religious experience, new religious movements, and so on, while in that sense it remains open, there's also a much more totalistic hostility between one category in which all superstition exists and one category in which all opposition to superstition exists. And to some extent, I think you can see that plays out even in how tremendously violent Chinese communism was toward religion, also Cambodian communism, trying to imitate Chinese communism, which was indeed more totalistic and more violent than Soviet communism. And although Soviet communism had its tremendous massacres, as with so many religious documents from so many different eras of history, we have this remarkable tension between the claims to supernatural knowledge, being utterly transcendental, often immortal, unchanging, and the all too human political reality. That's, of course, fleeting. It wouldn't have been written the same way 10 years later or 10 years earlier. It really reflects the context, both of the preacher and of the crowd being preached to, in this case in 1979.